People always assume you joined the military because you ran out of options. That's what my mom always said, service was for folks who couldn't figure out their future. My dad? He called it throwing away my potential. And my brother? He just laughed and said women had no business anywhere near combat zones. Meanwhile, while they were all rolling their eyes at my decisions, I was quietly making history as one of the youngest colonels the U.S. Air Force has ever seen. It was that time of year again, the dreaded Halworth family dinner. Crystal glasses were chiming, wine was flowing, and everyone was toasting my brother, Andrew, for landing a cushy new title at Winthrop and Beck, where our father happened to be one of the top execs. The oversized dining room in their fancy Pine Valley home buzzed with canned laughter and shallow applause as Andrew humbly bragged his way through the story of his latest promotion. Vice President of Ops by 30, Dad beamed, lifting his glass like it was the Holy Grail. Now that is how a Halworth succeeds. I just sat there, poking at my salmon and thinking about all the times he said I was sabotaging the family name because I picked the military over a boardroom. A decade of service, medals, promotions, leadership, and still, to them, I was the failure who couldn't hack it in the real world. So, what about you, Rachel? Aunt Diane's syrupy voice cut through the chatter. Still playing soldier? I met her smug expression head-on. Still serving, I said, cool and calm. My mom jumped in like she was trying to bail water from a sinking boat. Rachel's in an admin role now, something with computers, right, sweetie? Yeah. Something with computers. If by that she meant I was running the Air Force's top cyber defense unit and managing over 300 personnel. But of course, they didn't have the clearance to know that. And I'd given up trying to explain years ago. Such a waste, muttered Uncle Gene, shaking his head. With your schooling, you could have been doing something real by now. Earning serious money, like Andrew. Andrew raised his glass again, that smug grin never leaving his face. It's not too late, sis. I can probably get you an entry-level job on my team. Something a little more lady-friendly. The table chuckled in unison, like a pack of well-dressed hyenas. I squeezed my water glass tight, thinking about the classified briefing I'd just delivered to the Joint Chiefs, the presidential commendation still sitting on my desk, the mission I'd be commanding tomorrow, one that would be all over the news, though no one would ever know I was behind it. Rachel just needs to face it, my dad said, with that familiar disappointed sigh. Some people aren't built for the business world. The military's, well, it's a decent backup plan. Backup plan. I almost snorted. Funny, considering Winthrop and Beck, his pride and joy, had been practically begging for a government contract from my division for the past 6 months. And tomorrow morning? I'd be the one reviewing their proposal. I heard they're letting women be officers now, my cousin Brooke added, sounding proud of herself for being so informed. Maybe you could shoot for a promotion, like corporal or whatever. I bit my tongue. Let them stay clueless. I had more important things to deal with. My mom suddenly perked up like she just remembered her purpose in life. Oh. Rachel's friend Jonathan just launched a tech startup. He's single, you know. Maybe it's time to settle down, dear. Find a good man to look after you. Jonathan. As in Major General Jonathan Hayes, my commanding officer, recently divorced from his husband, and absolutely not looking to play house. I'm focused on work right now, I said, keeping it simple. My dad rolled his eyes. Work? You mean shuffling papers in some military cubicle? You had potential, Rachel. You really could have been something. I stood up slowly and laid my napkin down beside my barely touched plate. I should head out. Early meeting, huh? Andrew said with that smug grin. Wouldn't want to miss roll call. As I headed toward the front door, my dad's voice called after me. One day, Rachel, you'll realize what you've thrown away. The Halworth name used to mean something in this town. Funny. Tomorrow, it was going to mean something all right, just not what he thought. Once I was in my car, I pulled out my secure line and called a number I knew by heart. We all set for tomorrow, Major? I asked. Yes, Colonel, came the crisp reply. Operations begin at 0900. Winthrop and Beck's board won't know what hit him. I smiled, picturing the look on my father's face when he finally figured out who was holding the power at that table. Perfect. Make sure the documentation is squared away. I want this airtight. Of course, ma'am. Still think you should have given them a heads up, though. As I drove off, the glow of my parents' house disappeared in the rearview mirror. They'll find out soon enough. Back at my place, not the modest little on-base apartment my family assumed I had, but a sleek penthouse with skyline views, I went over the files one final time. Winthrop and Beck's cyber infrastructure was a disaster waiting to happen. They needed us far more than they realized. My phone lit up with a message from Andrew. Seriously, think about that entry-level job. Better than wasting your life playing soldier. I rolled my eyes and set the phone aside. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up a classified report that would make tomorrow's board meeting unforgettable. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's letting them figure it out on their own. I walked over to my closet and pushed aside the casual wear. Hanging at the back was my dress uniform, metals catching the soft lighting just right. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be Rachel Halworth, the family let down. I'd be Colonel Rachel Halworth, Commanding Officer of Cyber Operations for the United States Air Force, and the person deciding Winthrop and Beck's future. Dad always liked to say the Halworth name carried weight in this city. Tomorrow, he'd see exactly how right he was, just not in the way he imagined. I picked up an old photo from my desk, me at 18, beaming in my Air Force Academy uniform, with my family in the background, barely hiding their disapproval. 10 years, dozens of missions, 3 promotions later, and I was finally about to show them what their fallback career had made me. The next morning, I arrived at Winthrop and Beck's corporate tower a full hour before the board convened. My uniform was sharp, metals polished, insignia crisp. The security guard did a double take when he scanned my credentials. Colonel Halworth, wait, are you? Yes, I said flatly. I'm the VP's daughter. He straightened instantly, eyes darting to my rank. Ma'am, Major General Hayes is waiting for you in the executive boardroom. I stepped into the private elevator, remembering how, as a kid, this building felt like some kind of palace. Now? Just another target on my mission list. Jonathan was already waiting upstairs, his own uniform commanding the kind of attention my family still thought only suits could earn. You ready for this, Colonel? He asked. Born ready, sir, I replied, scanning through the final version of the report. At 8:45 sharp, the board members began filing in. My father came in last, deep in conversation with Andrew. Neither noticed me standing near the wall, half obscured behind a presentation screen. Let's get started, my dad said, taking his usual place at the head of the table. As you know, we're here to discuss the military cybersecurity contract. Our tech team, actually, Jonathan interrupted, standing tall. I'll be running this meeting. He nodded toward me. Colonel? I stepped forward, the blood drained from my father's face. Andrew's smirk evaporated. The room fell into stunned silence. Good morning, I said, my voice steady and commanding. I'm Colonel Rachel Halworth, head of the Air Force Cyber Operations Command. We're here to address serious vulnerabilities in your network infrastructure. Rachel, what is this? My father stammered. I clicked the remote. The first slide appeared on the massive screen. 3 months ago, our team identified multiple attempted breaches of your systems. Foreign actors targeting your servers, client data, and proprietary tech. Your security isn't just weak, it's practically non-existent. The board squirmed. Andrew stared at my ribbons like he'd never really looked at me before. Your current protocols, I paused, letting the tension sink in, are not only outdated, they're a threat to national security. I flipped to the next slide. A few gasps echoed around the table. My dad's face had turned the color of chalk. Colonel Halworth, one board member asked nervously, what are our options? My dad tried to jump back in. Wait a second, Rachel, you can't just. That's Colonel Halworth, Mr. Vice President, Jonathan snapped. And yes, she can. She's the authority here. I laid out the terms, mandatory full system overhaul, aggressive audits by my team, and strict compliance protocols. The cost made a few board members wince, but they knew they didn't have a choice. If you decline, I added, we'll have no choice but to classify Winthrop and Beck as a national security risk. That means immediate termination of all federal contracts. My father's jaw tightened. He understood. That would be the end of his empire. You've got 24 hours to make a decision, I finished. The choice is yours. As the boardroom emptied out, my father stayed frozen in his seat, staring at me like I was a stranger. Andrew lingered by the door, looking stunned. All this time, Dad finally said. You were a colonel? Head of cyber ops? You're the one holding this company's future? I gave him a small smile. I'm all the things you swore I'd never become. Why didn't you tell us? He asked, almost pleading. Would you have listened? I said. Or would you have laughed it off, like everything else? Andrew stepped closer, looking suddenly awkward. Ratch. I didn't know. Clearly, I said, cutting him off. And by the way? That entry-level job you offered me? I earned 3 times your salary, base pay. I gathered my files and turned to leave. Rachel, wait, my father stood up suddenly. Maybe we could talk about this, as family. I paused and looked him straight in the eye. Family? Last night you told me I'd never be anything. That I was wasting my life. I gestured to the insignia on my chest. Well, this is who I am, Dad. This is my potential. I walked to the door. And right now? I'm not your daughter. I'm a colonel. And I'm doing my job. James appeared in the doorway. You ready, General? The Joint Chiefs are waiting for our briefing. Joint Chiefs? Andrew muttered, barely audible. Yeah, I said, turning to face him. Guess all that paper pushing in a military cubicle really did lead somewhere. Later that night, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. My mother, suddenly so proud of her daughter in uniform. Aunt Diane, apologizing for years of snide comments. A flood of cousins, now wondering if I could help their kids get into the Air Force. I ignored them all. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the balcony of my penthouse, the same one they all thought I couldn't possibly afford on a military paycheck. A week later, Winthrop and Beck signed the contract. The biggest deal in the company's history. The board made another decision, too, quietly nudging my dad toward early retirement and promoting someone else to fill his seat. Andrew's team was the first to undergo a full systems audit. I didn't attend the signing ceremony. I was in D.C., briefing congressional leaders on the next wave of cyber threats. My father emailed me later. Long message. Half apology, half explanation. I was wrong, he wrote. You've become something I never imagined. I replied with 2 sentences. I didn't become something, Dad, I always was. You just couldn't see it. 2 months later, I earned another promotion. Brigadier General, the youngest in Air Force history. The ceremony was packed with senators, top brass, and international officials. My family sat in the last row, watching quietly as their so-called fallback kid accepted her star. My mother cried. My dad looked like he'd taken a punch to the chest. Andrew actually tried to salute me, completely butchered it, but the effort was almost sweet. At the reception that night, a young lieutenant walked up, nervous but determined. General Hellworth, she said, your speech about forging your own path, it really meant something. My family doesn't support my service either. I smiled, thinking of that old photo, me at 18, standing tall in my academy uniform while my whole family stood behind me, faces tight with disappointment. Let me tell you a story, I said. It starts with a family dinner where they told me I'd never amount to anything. She listened closely as I told her the story. Around us, the reception buzzed, conversations between generals, policymakers, people shaping the future. And through the tall windows, I saw my family gathered at a table in the corner, still out of place in this world they never tried to understand, because sometimes, success isn't about proving anyone wrong. Sometimes, it's about proving yourself right, and sometimes, just sometimes, the path everyone warned you against turns out to be the one you were meant to take. I reached up, fingertips brushing the silver star on my shoulder. Thinking about the nights I stayed up studying while Andrew drank himself stupid. The missions I completed while they hosted charity fundraisers. Every step, every fight, every choice they mocked, until they couldn't anymore. My dad always said the Halworth name stood for something in this city. He was right, but now it stood for something entirely different. Something he never saw coming. Something he couldn't define. Couldn't claim. Couldn't control. It stood for excellence. It stood for service. It stood for the quiet, unwavering truth. Sometimes the greatest thing you can do is dare to disappoint the right people.